Hi everyone, welcome to the Psychology Live Q&A. We're just going to make sure everyone can get logged on and then we'll talk you through how it works if you haven't been to one of these yet this week. And then we'll talk to you a little bit about psychology at Queen Elizabeth. So we'll give it a minute or so just to let everyone kind of get logged in and then we'll get started. Told you it's gonna fall down. Literally when we start. I'll pop that down there. That's not gonna happen.
Well, let's hope my picture doesn't fall down or whatever.
Freud just falls.
No. Well, he's a fallen man anyway.
I should have my bookshelf in the background. There we go.
We should have some music playing.
Yeah. Waiting room music.
Yeah.
Right, we're at 70 participants at the minute, so we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started for the psychology Q&A.
So you're an advantage to me. I've never done one of these before, so
we'll manage.
We'll be okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right, the numbers seem to have slowed, so we will get started. So welcome everybody. I'm Sam Hawkins. I'm the course leader for psychology.
And I'm Ed Nolan. I'm one of the directors at the college, but also teach psychology at QE.
So today's session, it's going to run for around half an hour. It's going to give you the opportunity to talk to us, ask us some questions about psychology. It works via the Q&A function. So if you haven't been on these, there is a little Q&A button that gives you the opportunity to type in a question. It'll pop up on our screens and we'll verbally answer those for you. We're going to start with a little kind of slides, a couple of introductory points to psychology at QE and psychology in general for some of you that may not even really know what it's all about. So, psychology is the study of the mind, how it works and how it affects behaviour. It's all about understanding why we behave the way we do. There's scientific elements, there's mathematical elements. It's a big picture to explain human behaviour. Probably one of the biggest questions that a lot of you will have is there coursework? How is it kind of assessed? Psychology is a traditional A-level, so it actually is all exam. There's 3 exams at the end of the 2 years that you'd study at QE with us. So there's 3 papers, one called Past to Present, the second one is Investigating Behaviour, and the third one is all about implications in the real world. And they're equally weighted. So what this means is each exam is worth exactly the same. Ed's going to talk you through the 3 papers and a little bit about each one now.
Right, so as Sam said, there are 3 different components and they're all quite exciting in their own way. So when you come in to do psychology at QE, in the first year, you'll start 2 of the components. One of them is a psychology of past and present, where we're learning kind of about the broad approaches in psychology. So we look at 5 different approaches to explain human behavior. We look at the biology, obviously looking at the brain. It's a major part of it. We look at how biology determines our behavior. We will look at what's called the behaviorist approach, which is about our environment. Some of you may have heard of Ivan Pavlov with his dogs that salivated to a bell. Well, this idea that we learn from reinforcements, we learn through associations, we will look at that. And we'll also look at what's called the cognitive approach, which is about the mind. Cognitives like cogs in your head, like a machine, how your mind works the machine, how you think, really. We will look at something called the psychodynamic approach. I don't know if you can see, I have a figure up behind me of Sigmund Freud. And that's the idea that our early childhood influences our behavior, and that we create this kind of unconscious mind, and there are drives in our unconscious mind. So for instance, one of my favorite colors is orange. You can see my orange tie. Why? Well, I don't know why. Maybe there's something in my unconscious there driving me to like orange. And the last one's the positive approach. And that's a new area in psychology, which is looking at how psychology influences us in a positive way, how actually it can make us happier, more fulfilled. And so when we look at those, we look at therapies, we look at research studies, we look at an argument, a debate within it, such as is the mother really important for early childhood? Should mothers be the primary caregiver? We also in the first year do component 2, which is the science part. It's how to investigate human behavior. So we look at how to do an experiment, how to do observations, how to do questionnaires. And as part of that, we also look at how to analyze our data. So there is actually a little bit of maths in there. You will have to do some maths, and you needed to have got a 4 or above in your GCSE maths in order to do psychology. In the second year, we do 2 personal investigations as part of component 2, which is 2 investigations that you plan and carry out and do yourself, which is great. The students love that. And we've just been looking at well-being and exercise and seeing if exercise has an effect on how good we feel about ourselves. The third component is really interesting in the second year, because we look at
everyone's favorite.
Yeah, it's everyone's favorite. We look at 3 different behaviors. So we look at criminal behavior. We also look at addictions and schizophrenia. And we look at different explanations, biological explanations and social explanations for these behaviors. And we look at how we can help people modify those behaviors. So if you suffer from an addiction, that's what we're looking at right now. How can we reduce that addiction? And we look at chemical processes and through drugs, or we look at behavioral ones through something called aversion therapy. We also have a controversies section to it, where we have kind of debates, and debating is part of both the component 1 and the component 3 paper. And so we're looking at things like, should psychologists use animals in their research? Is psychology a male-based, or is it a sexist science or not? And the students quite enjoy those aspects too, and they're pulling together all of the knowledge that they've learned from the other 2 components to produce their arguments and present the kind of cases either way. So those are the 3 topic areas, the 3 components that we go through. And as I say, they're quite engaging, but the component 3 is one that students really love right at the end.
In terms of our success, we're really, really proud of our results as a department. We've had 100% pass rate for the last few years, and in the formal exam session, kind of in 2019, we had 100% pass rate, with 61% of our students getting higher grades. So 61% of our students got A star to Bs, and that's 10% were purely A stars. So something we're really, really proud of. We're a very successful department in the college, and we're really impressed, and we're really happy with how our students succeed over their time with us. Some of you might be thinking, what does psychology link to? How will I get a job if I do psychology A level? It's quite a question we get asked quite a lot, I think. And it's all about different skills that you'll get from psychology. It's obviously the content and the understanding of people and the way we behave, but there's also communication skills. You develop sensitivity and empathy because of the topics that we do discuss on a regular basis. We help you stay organised because there is a lot of content, so it's about staying on track. And careers, it's really kind of quite a broad spectrum. You get students that study psychology that go to do psychology at university. We've got a lot of students going to do law or kind of criminal forensic based courses. But you can go into many career paths, really, things like the art or counselling or healthcare, or kind of any sector is really helpful for psychology. And we do try as much as possible to run exciting trips and visits. So historically, we've done trips to London, and we've been to see Derren Brown. We've had exciting visitors into college. So we have Dr. Guy Sutton come in and do Brain Day, where he dissects a brain in front of our students. Ed, I don't know if you want to talk about Adrian Rain, our visitor.
Yes, certainly. One of the key studies we look at is research by Professor Adrian Rain from the University of Pennsylvania. He scanned the brains of murderers, murderers who were just about to be convicted, and compared them to control groups. He's one of the foremost researchers in this area. He's a very, very famous person. He's also originally from Darlington. We're very lucky that he comes in and speaks to our students. So it's great to have one of the big pieces of research that we look at. He comes in and talks to our students, and he's very pleased to do it. And he does it all for a can of Sprite and a sandwich, which is great. So it's wonderful to have him come in and kind of share his knowledge and to engage with the students, and they've loved that.
So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of psychology. So the opportunity now really is to ask us some questions. We've already got a couple popping up on the bottom. So type away if you've got anything that you would really like to know about psychology, and we'll try and answer them in the next kind of 20 minutes, really. So the first one, do we work on topics like nature versus nurture? Ooh. Ed, do you want to take that one?
Okay, yes, certainly. We do. I mean, you have to, don't you? When you're looking at human beings and you're trying to understand them, we want to know, are they born that way? Is that their biology, or is that environment? And so it really is it's a kind of a theme that runs across all of psychology. So we look at it in the first year. Obviously, when we look at different approaches, environment with the behaviorist approach compared to biology, the biological approach, or where does Sigmund Freud come into this in the psychodynamic? So it is very much that argument that we look at. We look at it in the second year, most definitely when we look at those three behaviors: criminal behavior, addictive behavior, and schizophrenia. There are aspects of that as we go through. So understanding the nature-nurture arguments will be central to kind of evaluating, analysing different explanations of human behaviour. Of course, you don't get a firm conclusion. You've got to get ready for that. But actually, it's a bit of both, that it's an interaction between those two things. The question is, how much of an interaction? And the researchers like Adrian Rain, who would very much be on the nature side, very much the biology side, where there are other psychologists who are very much on the nurture. I suppose it's up to you as you come through to listen to the arguments and come to your own ideas as to which one you favour the most. So it really is central to that. There are other debates as to whether we have free will or does things determine how we behave. There's all kinds of ideas that we look at in psychology.
Yeah. What good subject links with psychology? We've got students that do a real mix of subjects. So we've got students that will mix it with the likes of law and history or English. We do have to write essays in psychology, so having kind of written skills from English or history really helps and can be really useful. We get a lot of students that study sciences along psychology, so they'll take maybe biology and chemistry and then fit psychology as their third option, especially if they're looking towards like medic or kind of scientific based professions. It usually fits and is considered a science itself at university, so that's always a good one. You get a lot of students with sociology, health and social care, criminology is kind of a combination with psychology. Really, there's no wrong combination for psychology, I would say. So if it's something that interests you and it kind of is something that you're not really sure about how it would work, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because there is pretty much every combination out there, and psychology works really nicely with the majority.
Well, the next question is a great question here. It says, what can doing A-level lead to in psychology? Well, Sam's already answered some of those questions. So in our class, we will have students who want to do medicine, and they take chemistry, biology, and psychology. Some of the medicine schools actually like it because you actually do more about the human brain and you do more about illness and conditions than you do in any of your other subjects, particularly when we're looking at mental health. So you will get people who say, yes, I want to do medicine, psychology works. with that. It's funny, when I did my degree in psychology, my friends did a number of different things. So I became a teacher. I had a friend who became an army officer, and he used the things that he learnt in psychology when he ended up in conflict. So he was in Afghanistan. And so there was somebody became an accountant and one became a psychologist. He became what's called an occupational psychologist, working in business. So it links to a lot of different things. There was a piece of research looking at transferable skills of degrees. And they actually put them as a list of which degrees have the most transferable skills in there. Now, top of the list came geography, which my friend who sits next to me at work, the geography teacher, would love. But second became psychology, because not only do you understand people, and it's good for any job that people are an aspect to, but also you understand how to research people, how to analyze data, how to do all these different things. So psychology in itself as a degree or as A level has some great skills that you will learn for lots of different occupations. But also it is a preference for some occupations, like becoming a psychologist. So it's a great course if you're just interested in it, that can take you into lots of different avenues and lots of different jobs.
Yeah. Is psychology more English or maths based? Good question. There is a really big there is a mathematical component to the course. GCSE standard of maths, which is why you would need a 4 at GCSE to study with us. So things like mean, median and mode, the range, drawing graphs, reading data tables, those kinds of things mathematically you will need to be able to manage. In terms of English, there is some essay writing for the exams, but we do prepare you for that. We skill you up, we make sure you're ready, and we make sure our students can handle the English element of it and really do support you with that. So if it's something that you would worry about, don't let it concern you too much, because we are there to help with that element of it quite a lot.
Okay, I've got another great question. I'm liking these questions. Would psychology be useful to become a psychiatrist? Now, a psychiatrist, let's talk about a few things. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor who specializes in mental health and mental illness. So to become a psychiatrist, you need to do a degree in medicine. You need to do qualifications in medicine to become the medical doctor. And so we've already spoken and said that great, you need chemistry, you need biology for that. Psychology is a fantastic complement to those, particularly if psychiatry is what you're looking at. If you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I want to be a medical doctor, or I'm not sure if I'm going to get the really high grades in chemistry and biology, there is an alternative called a clinical psychologist. Now, a clinical psychologist is not a medical doctor. They can't prescribe drugs, but it's a health professional that works with people with mental health and issues and mental illness. And to become a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, requires you to have a psychology degree. So obviously A-level psychology is ideal to become a psychologist, a clinical psychologist. But then there are other professionals who work with mental health, such as a mental health nurse or a therapist, a psychotherapist. Now, a psychotherapist requires you to have a postgraduate qualification. You don't need to have a psychology degree or a medicine degree to do that. However, it's advantageous that you do. And also the same if you're looking at counselling, those kinds of areas. So lots of students will do psychology with counselling at university, the area that they want to work in. So for all of those, I would say psychology is very important. However, there are avenues into the care, working with people with mental health issues that don't require a psychology qualification, but you still will be doing lots of psychology when you come to train. So it's better to at least have an A-level in the subject to prepare for that.
Yeah. A couple of people have asked, how big are the classes? We are the largest subject across the college. We have a lot of students that study psychology, but we're also the biggest teaching team. So the classes average out at around 24 students. That's kind of capacity. Some of them are a little bit below that, 22. I've got a class of kind of 19 at the minute. So it is completely flexible, but we do try and cap at 24 as much as possible. So make sure that we can kind of engage and get to know you on a really good level and support you where you feel like you need it.
Yeah. What I would say about class sizes is our results are excellent. I mean, they're top 10% in the country. They're excellent results there. And part of that is because I think there are, you know, you're in with a group of students with debate, discussion and work, and we can do all those kinds of things. So yes, they're probably quite full compared to maybe some institutions, but there are real benefits to that, I think. Sorry, I've just chipped in on.
No, it's all right. Next one, how much maths is involved? We have kind of touched on this. Ed, I don't know if you want to take it because of Comp 2 delivery.
Sorry, yeah, I teach the mathsy bit.
Yeah.
So I said earlier that you need to have GCSE maths. So in one of the papers, which is the component 2, the investigating human behaviour paper, there will be an aspect of maths. Some of the maths is very basic. So it's to calculate the mean, mode, median and range, which, you know, students tend to be able to come in and do. Pretty much all our students can do that as they come in. I think where the maths aspect is that you need to be able to understand why we use things like statistics. You don't have to do any calculations. What I would say is we will help you through it. We have plenty of students who maybe weren't so keen on the statistics part, who came out with an A and A star in psychology. And in the end, it's worth about 10% of one of the papers. So yes, there is a bit of maths. If you're really interested in the subject and you want to do it, you will overcome it, but we will help you through it. We will help any student through that, as long as you can do those basic calculations that I mentioned at the beginning.
I was one of those students, so when I was thinking about choosing A-levels, the maths element of psychology was the bit that was kind of a little bit worrying for me, but I didn't let it put me off, and obviously I've kind of fallen in love with it as a subject and kind of still teach it to this day, so don't let it be the deciding factor for you. In order to study psychology, do you need to study sociology as well? And I've seen another question further down comparing psychology to sociology. I'll take this one because I have actually taught both subjects. They really do go hand in hand. It's not more one or the other. They are different. So psychology, as we kind of mentioned, is very scientific in its nature. It's looking at research, it's looking at studies and the maths behind it, and why do we behave the way we do. It's all about people and our behaviors and our reactions to the world around us. Sociology is about society. So that's understanding how institutions within society influence us. So things like the education system and politics and kind of the criminal justice system. How do those institutions make us kind of think and like influence society around us? So they're not the same. They are very different, but they do work well together. So you can do both. They would support each other. There's links where we talk about why someone would be a criminal, and then you look at criminal kind of elements in sociology too. But they are different, because sociology is about society, psychology is about us and how we behave.
That's great. That's great. I've got a question here about looking at animal psychology, because somebody is thinking about veterinary science. We will look a little bit at animal behaviour when we look at the behavioural approach. We look at this idea of conditioning. I wouldn't say animal behaviour is a core aspect of what we do in psychology. It will help you to understand, I suppose, how animals function, how to deal with and condition animals, particularly if we think about how people look after their pets and how they get them to do different things. What I would say is, if you're looking to do veterinary science, number one, you need to get some top GCSEs. And then you need to pick up chemistry and biology. Once you have picked those two subjects, you have a third A level to go with that. Then that's up to you really where you go. I wouldn't choose psychology as being one of the subjects that is important to get into veterinary science, because it isn't. It does touch on it a little bit, but you'll also touch on maths doing veterinary science as well, as you kind of do your research and do the aspects in veterinary science. So my advice to you is pick up your chemistry, your biology, and if psychology is interesting to you, do it. I had somebody who I was a tutor to, well, a number of years ago, who became a vet. She did psychology. She absolutely loved it. But her heart was becoming a vet. Did it support her application? I'm not sure it supported any more than a number of other A levels, but certainly she gained a lot from studying psychology.
I've just kind of scanned through the questions, and some of them are asking about kind of how many hours, what does it look like as like logistically to take psychology. So there are 5 teaching hours of psychology in your week if you decide to study with us, and that's actually split over 4 lessons. So you'll get 2 1-hour lessons and 2 1.5-hour lessons, which make up your 5 hours of delivery time. And that's what we call kind of contact time. That's in the classroom with the teacher in front of you, talking you through and teaching you the new information. In regards to how much independent work we'd expect, pretty much every subject across college would suggest you should do the equivalent of what you're doing face-to-face independently. So we would always suggest about 5 hours worth of independent study time alongside that. But the really big change, and what a lot of students don't realise as they move into college, you won't have a full week, you won't have a full timetable, you won't have every single lesson, you'll have free periods, you'll have maybe even an afternoon off. And it's about using that time effectively to kind of pick up on your study and make sure that you're kind of on track and working where you need to be for each subject, including psychology. And someone else has asked, is there a lot of group work or is it more individual? It's a mixed teaching setup. I think we work independently on some activities, we debate a lot and we discuss as a class a lot of key elements. And there's a really good opportunity where you're doing your personal investigation for the component 2 paper, where you get to work with somebody to build your experiment and work on it together as a team or as a group. So we have a really good mix of that. And someone else asked, just along kind of like the logistical element of it, was about the amount of teachers. We actually split teach. So like how Ed said, he does the math side. I teach the component 1 delivery for first year at the minute. So I'm the one taking you through kind of the past to present of psychology. And then in second year, I deliver the criminal behaviour unit. And Ed delivers the addiction and schizophrenia. So like we have a class together, but we teach different parts of the course to that class. It just keeps kind of the week a bit mixed up. It means that you're getting different elements of the course, and I think for students it's quite refreshing to have 2 different members of staff that they can kind of engage with in different ways.
Okay. We've got a question here, another good one. How does psychology affect our day-to-day lives? Now, there's 2 questions there. How does A-level psychology affect your day-to-day life? How does psychology in itself? Well, psychology in itself is everything about your day-to-day life. And when you study psychology, it will change the way you see the world and see yourself within it. How would A-level psychology change affect your day-to-day life? Well, of course, it's about people, and the people studying psychology are people. So it helps them understand themselves a great deal. What psychology isn't, it's not one big journey of self-discovery where we hold hands in the class and we talk about our innermost feelings. And we don't get to do that, particularly with COVID. But what it will do is it will help you understand. It will help you understand yourself and the people around you. So we're hoping by doing that, when you finish A-level psychology, not only does it broaden your view of the world, but it broadens your view of yourself, that you will be able to deal with situations in a different way because of your understanding of yourself and other people. So it is help, but don't think that's all you're going to do, because when I'm teaching you how to conduct an experiment, you might be saying, well, how does this help me understand the world around me and people? Because also what it is it's a course in becoming a psychologist. And psychologists help people, psychologists understand people, but psychologists also research people as well. And one thing that you will find is when you get older and you're looking at the news and they're talking about some research or something, you'll start saying, well, I did that in psychology. Actually, I understand. And there are some limitations to what they're doing. So that also helps, I think, a kind of a broader kind of effect of studying psychology.
Yeah, good question. A couple of questions now asking about the entry requirements for psychology. So what kind of grades do I need to have? The entry requirement for psychology is a grade 4 in maths and a grade 4 in science. So you need to have a secure grade 4, if not above, in those two areas. Someone has asked, if you study psychology at GCSE, is there a minimum grade to take it as an A-level? Not many schools offer GCSE psychology. Probably, I can only think of a couple in the area that might have had me as their teacher and Ed. But if you study it at GCSE, we would kind of, is it a 5 that we would usually expect?
I think 4.
Or a 4, yeah.
Yeah.
So we take it, if you were lucky enough to study GCSE psychology, then it's a grade 4. And just as a reminder, really, the content for our A-level is very different to the kind of most of the GCSE specifications out there. There is a little bit of overlap, but we do explore it in very different ways as well.
I mean, on that point, both Sam and I have taught GCSE psychology at one of our partner schools, as we've done that for a number of years now. One thing I would say is students who have done GCSE psychology have found, at least the first year, they've understood it a lot more quickly. But there are very few of you that have done that. I've got a question here. Would you advise to take psychology when wanting a career in detective police work?
There was another question about its links with criminology and forensic psychology as well.
Right. I must be able to see it differently. I see about 4 questions. Sam's got that. She's got it all there. You know, to become a police officer, I think now there are 3 routes to become a police officer. One route is to take the degree in policing, and then you move on and apply for a job. Another route is to do a degree and then go in as a postgraduate, a degree in something else, and psychology most certainly would be advantageous for that. And the third route is that you don't do a degree at all, and that I think they're devising an apprenticeship, but there's certainly another level. And as you go through, I think you end up still doing a degree in policing with the police force. So is it a prerequisite? The answer is no. Is it linked? The answer is yes. Well, as I said earlier, policing is about understanding people, and you will gain that from psychology, but you'll understand things like schizophrenia, mental health as well. But also, 1/4 of the last paper is about criminal psychology, which is understanding criminals. What is a criminal? What is criminal behavior? And why do criminals do what they do? And how do we help criminals? So that is really quite important. Now, of course, we run 2 courses at QE that are linked with crime. Well, we run 3 actually. Psychology is one. Another one is sociology, and they do the sociology of crime in that course. But we also run a qualification, criminology qualification, which is a great qualification. Now, in that qualification, you will also do a little bit about why criminals become criminals, but it goes beyond that, and it looks at the judicial system. How do you support? How do you reduce crime? You know, all of these different factors. It's a bit of psychology, a bit of sociology put in. Now, we do have quite a number of students who are doing sociology, psychology, and criminology. Because that is where they want to go. That's the area that they want to do, either in policing or probation work or those kinds of areas. And that's great. to do that. And I think that would be very supportive. However, you don't have to do that. Only do those subjects if they are of interest to you. What we don't do is how to solve crimes. That is something we don't do in psychology. We're more about understanding the criminal and getting the criminal to reduce their criminal behaviour. And that's the same with sociology. There is a little bit about how to solve crimes in the criminology course. But certainly, yes, it's an aspect of our course that's very beneficial.
So there's a couple of questions again, kind of around, is psychology a competitive course? How many classes are there? How many people do you have studying the subject? We don't have a cap. We don't have really a limit of how many students we can let onto the course per year. We just try to ensure that we've got the staff capable of delivering the course. So this year we have 260 roughly in second year, and we've got 320 roughly in first year. So we're a big department. That means roughly we've got 14 classes in first year and 10 in second year. So we do have quite a lot of classes. Psychology is running every single hour of every single lesson within the college, and it's just about how your lesson would fit into that. It's not competitive, because as long as you've got the entry requirements, then we are happy to let you in. And as long as you think you're going to enjoy it, that's all we really ask for. And you to be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to just attempt to answer a few of the questions.
I know we've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Somebody wanted to know the psychologist I mentioned from the US Darlington. That's Professor Adrian Rain. He lived in Abbey Road, which is right next to our college. Another one asked, is psychology more science-based or English-based? It's both. It is probably tends to float towards a more science aspect, but you do have this kind of written style to be able to read and understand a theory and ideas. It is definitely not a science like biology or chemistry. There is a much more to it. Another one says, what type of experiments does this A-level include? Safe ones. So we look at things like memory, how your memory works. As I said, we did an experiment just looking at exercise and well-being, getting people to do a bit of exercise and see if that had impact on their self-worth. We've looked at perception exercises. So the ones that you actually do in A-level psychology tend to be ones that can be conducted within college or with your family and friends.
Right, I think we'll have to wrap it up there. We've gone over our half an hour time slot. If you do have any kind of really important questions that you don't feel like we've answered, hopefully we've managed to cover quite a lot of them. There is still some career kind of based questions. If you haven't already, if you look at our course, our subject website, that has a careers page on there, and it has information about careers linking to psychology. It links to the British Psychological Society website, and that has another really informative information kind of about careers and psychology links. So have a look there if you do have any kind of interest in that. But if you do have any other questions, if you can email college, then they'll send them our way, and we'll get back in touch with you as soon as we can. But thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've learned a lot about psychology at QE, and we look forward to seeing you as soon as possible. So have a nice evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.